So yesterday today's daf is daf Kuf Aleph. I'm sorry, Rose is helping. Show me. Okay, perfect. Wow. Okay, today's daf is daf Kuf Aleph, and we're continuing the discussion about interesting case because it actually brings together a lot of details, right? We've talked about gezela, we talked about stealing something, and we have a very interesting halacha that we've said many times, which is that if a person steals something and then they improve it, they don't have to give back the thing, right? It was called takanat hashavim, right? That a person who steals something, we don't want to make it hard for them to give it back. So even though I stole, let's say, a piece of wood, and in theory I should give back that piece of wood. If I've made it into a chair, we don't make you break the chair or give it back. We allow you to give back the value. In our Mishnah, we have a similar case, though it's not quite stealing. It's where you did something wrong, right? You gave wool to a dyer to make it black for you, and he did a terrible job, or he made it the wrong color. So there, the Mishnah said, this last case in the Mishnah, which is where we got up to yesterday, we're on top of Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, if I could find it, how do you find the next Daf? Okay. Oh, thank you. So what we said yesterday, and we'll repeat it today, well, let's read from the top, and then we'll get into the case. So the first line of Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita, Hanotein eitzim lecharash. You give wood to a carpenter. Lasot behem kisei. You want him to make a chair for you. Lasem behem safsal. He doesn't listen, and he makes a beautiful stool, but that's not what you asked for, right? Or it's a stool's like a safsal is like a couch, right?
A bench.
Bench, thank you. Or safsal vasamem kisei, or the opposite, right? You asked him to make a safsal, a bench, and he made a chair. Rabbi Meir says, Notein lo demei etzav, just like in our Mishnah, where you gave him wool, and he dyed it red instead of black, or black instead of red, says Rabbi Meir, it's essentially like Geneva, right? It's essentially like he stole it because he did not what you asked him to. He took your object and did something else with it. And so he pays you back like a ganav. Here, we don't have a category according to Rabbi Meir of Takanat Shavim. Why not? Because he wasn't, presumably because he didn't mean to steal it, right? He's not a ganav. He just did the wrong thing. He read the order wrong or something. So you don't worry that he's not going to give it back to you if you make him give back the wood. So there, sorry, that's you. Well, I'll read that's Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Meir says you just give back the amount of wood as you would if you stole it. Rabbi Yehuda says the opposite. That no, you always view the person who misappropriated the wood or the wool in our Mishnah on the bottom. So ima shevach yeter al yitzia, if the increased value of the wood now that it's a chair is greater than the amount of effort or nails or work that was put into making it that, then notein lo yitzia, then you pay him for his costs, right? Im hayitzia yitera al shevach, but if the amount of work and energy that went into making this beautiful chair is more than it's gone up in value, then notein lo shevach, then you pay him this lesser of those amounts. And so basically, Rabbi Yehuda says, just like in our Mishnah, that you punish the worker and you give him the less amount, meaning he gets paid lesser amount of either the value he added or the amount of cost that he invested into it, which is exactly what we said in our Mishnah. Continues the Gemara, though, the Braita, Moda Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir admits, in Natan Eitzim Lecharash, Lasot Mehem Kisei Na'ah. Let's say you give him money because you want him to make a beautiful chair, a very nice chair. And he does a bad job, right? You're like, I want it to be even, like most people would want. But he makes it asam mehem kisei ka'or, which if you recall in the Mishnah, we had a word ka'or with an aleph, which we said yesterday meant something that was bad, right? You use the bad dye. Here we have the word ka'or with an ayin, which makes a little bit more sense because it means ugly, right? You made into a chair that's ugly, or safsal, you gave him money to make, or not money, wood, and you hired him to make safsal na'ah. Safsal ka'or. Again, then Rabbi Meir admits that you punish that because he didn't do, meaning he did what you told him to do, but he did a bad job. So it's like if you dye it poorly. And there everyone agrees that if the value that it went up is greater than the value of the cost that he put into making it better, then you give him only his cost. V'im hayitzia yitir ala shevach notin lo demei shevach. And if he spent more money, he put in 2 hours of work and a ton of nails and sanding tools in order to make a bad chair, right? And it's worth nothing. He just turns out to be a bad carpenter. Then you only pay him what it actually went up in value. So that's similar to what we said in our Mishnah. Ask the Gemara today, a fascinating question that we're going to take till the end of today and actually till tomorrow. Iboil, they had a question. Yesh shevach
But if it's such a bad item, why would it go up in value?
Well, meaning, so it could be that it would go up. Not there's cases where it doesn't go up at all in value, and then you don't pay anything, right? You get your wood back. But let's say he took wool. I mean, he took wood. He did sand it down. He did nail it together. He just did it in a way that's very cheap, which you obviously can do, as opposed to doing it in a very exact way, or it's not even, or it's not sanded nicely. But it's certainly worth more than the raw wood in that case. So there is some value, but less than, of course, what you would have expected by hiring him. Ask the Gemara today, Iboilu. They asked a question. We'll see what this question is. The question is, let's say, it's a very complicated question. The Gemara is going to take a little bit of time till we really understand what we're asking. But I'll give away some of it because it's always easier when you give away some of it. Let's say you take dye, right? You take wool and you take dye, and you put those together in a vat, and you heat it up and you mix it and you do whatever a dyer does, right? And then at the end of the day, you take this wool outside of the vat, and all you have basically is a thing of wool that's a different color, that's blue. And the question is, well, yesh shevach samanim al hatzemer. Do you say that the improvement, right, the shevach, the added value of the dye on the wool is considered to be part of the dye? Meaning you look at the wool and say, this is wool that has been dyed. Ein shevach samanim al hatzemer. Or do you say that there's the samanim basically disappeared? Right, you took the color, you mixed it with the wool, and now there's only wool left that happens to be blue, but there's none of the actual dye. Now, this is where what's the question, right? Like, what semantics matter over here? So, hechidam, what are you asking, right? Ilema, is it a case where gazal samanim, right? A person stole a dye from somebody else, vitakinu. Vitarinu, and you basically crushed them together and you prepared them v'tzavabahem, and you use them to dye your own thing, right? So Shimon goes, or Reuven, let's say Reuven, sorry, Reuven goes, right, and Reuven took this dye, right, and so basically dye, of course, is always wood or vegetables or fruits, right? We're going to see fruits today. A lot of klipe agozim, so the shells of things. So you took the dye, you stole these dyes, right? And you basically prepared them, and you use them to dye your sheets, let's say. And so the question then is, what do you pay back, right? Mm-hmm. So can the guy come to you and say, look, you stole my dye, you stole my gallstones, let's say, you turned them into a dye, you dyed your wood with them, give me back the wood because the wood still has my dye in it, right? So basically hand me back my dye. Says Imar, but that clearly you don't hand it back because tepakle mishum de kaninu b'shinoi, right? The fact is that in order to turn these gallstones into a dye, you had to crush them and soak them and make them into something that would sort of allow the material to pick it up. So
also, if it's like the stain.
So what do you mean? What does that mean?
It gives a color.
Well, whatever it is, you stole something. You went to his house and you stole something, and now he wants it back. But clearly, he can't collect the wool and say, "Oh, I'm just collecting the dye that happens to be on the wool," right? Because you've been koneh by changing it. So it can't be referring to that case. There's no nafkamina in that case whether the dye is in the wool or not part of the wool. It says, well, okay, that's not the case. You know what the question was? Let's say you gazal samanim shruyim. You stole the dye that was already soaked, meaning they took the gallstones, or they took the shells of the nuts, and they soaked them. And now basically it's like what you buy in a store, right? It's ready-made dye. So I stole, or Reuven stole that dye, mitzavabahem, and he used them to color his wool. So then the question is, can Shimon, who it was stolen from, say, give me the wool because you have my dye. My dye is on your wool. I see it right there. Give me back your wool. It's the only way that you can do it. Or do we say, no, no, no. The dye is gone and it imparted a color on the wool. So what do you say, Mike? Yesh shevach samanim agabi tzemer. Do you say that the dye is on the wool? And Amar Le, Shimon can say to Ruvain, Havli samanai de shakil tinu. Give me back the stain, right? The dye that you took from me. So give me the wool. Odilma in shevach samanim agabi tzemer. So, or do you say, look, there's no actual residue, let's say, of the dye on the wool. It's just the effect of it. And I'm going to let the gabai v'lo midi. So then Ruvain can say, I didn't steal anything from you. What do you mean I stole your dye? Where's the dye? I don't see it anywhere. Says the Gemara, that's ridiculous. You stole dye, right? Amri says the Gemara, even if you say in shevach samanim agabe tzemer, even if you say that the dye is not physically on the wool, of course, if you steal dye, you can't then say, Mimatzi Amrale, Letlach Gabai V'lo Midi. Can Reuven then say, I didn't steal anything from you? Right? Namele, Shimon can say, well, you did steal something, and Havli Samanai Dafsa Detinu, right? Give me what you stole from me. So you went into my house and stole my dye. So whether it's actually on the wool now, or you don't view it as being still intact, you view it as being making an effect on the wool and not being there anymore, you've got to pay me back. So who cares whether it's on the wool or not on the wool? Ella, you know what the question is for? It's referring to something else. It's the hachkis. It's the other direction, right? Let's say, ein shevach samanim al gabe tzemer. Let's say the question is, there's no value, right, of the dye on the tzemer, meaning Ruvain stole the dye. He took it home. He dyed his coat with this. Shimon catches up to him and says, give me back my dye. And Ruvain says, I can't. It's gone. I used it. And even though my shirt is now blue, you can't claim your dye for my shirt. It's no longer present, right? So then Ruvain's got to pay Shimon the amount that he stole for the dye. Oh, Dilma, or do you say the opposite? That in fact, no, the dye is really there. And the dye is sitting on the coat. Yesh shevach samanim agabe tzemer. You do have the value of the dye on the wool. V'amrle, and Ruvain can say, sorry, Shimon can say to Ruvain, Hamanchi kamach shakilnu, right? He says to him, I see my dye, I see my blue sitting right there on your coat. Give me the coat, right? And so he can take it. Says, well, what do you mean he can take it? But you know, Ruvain might have stolen $20 of dye. This coat is now worth $150. Ruvain can't collect $150 just because he stole $20. Shakilnu, right? What do you mean he could take them? But my shakle, how is he going to take them, right? Meaning, in what right does he have to take them? Bitsafun, right? The question is, he's going to take them by using, remember we had earlier, the safun, which is the soap, we translated here, but the cleaning material, where you basically took the coat, you washed it off, and you basically took out the dye, right? Now, of course, if you do that, the dye is not going to collect at the bottom of the pan, right? Safun, if you use soap to wash off the dye, avuri ma'aver, right? You basically ruined it. Hashavalo of it. You didn't return anything to anybody. So it doesn't make any sense, right? What are you going to say? You're going to say, give me the coat? I don't have to give you the coat, right? I can give you the dye in the coat. Ella says, well, you're right. We're just clarifying what the question is. Hacha b'mayaskina, and the question that we're asking, this is the fourth to last narrow line. The question we were asking was, Kigon, a case, de gazal tzemer vis samamanim dechad. What happened was Ruvain walked into Shimon's house and stole his wool and his dye.
Come on.
And he did him a big favor, right? And he came and he said, look, I loved your wool and I thought it was going to look great, dyed blue. But I didn't have any dye. So I stole your wool, I stole your dye, and I dyed it blue. And now he goes back to him and he says to him, okay, well, I realize it was a big mistake. I'm sorry I stole it from you, and I want to give it back to you. The kamahader now I give you back the wool, right? There's no dye left. The dye is gone. So the question is, do you say yesh shevach samanim agabe tzemer? Then in fact the wool is still considered to be basically present, coating the wool. Sorry, the dye is coating the wool. And when I hand you back the dye, the wool with the dye on it, I'm handing you back the wool and your dye. I'm returning to you the dye and the wool. Odilma, or do you say, wait a second, Ein shevach samanim agabe tzemer, right? You don't view it as if the dye is still a part of the wool. And Reuven stole wool and he stole dye, and all he returned was wool, right? But Tzemer mahaderle, we're at the first wide line, samanim lo mahaderle. He never returned the dye. So now what does he have to do? He's got to go find money and pay you back for the dye. This is where we'll slow down. That might be the case. But remember, Amri, when someone steals wool, all they have to give back is the raw wool. If he gave back dyed wool, that's worth more than raw wool. So he's returning $200 worth of cost when he stole $100 worth of cost. So yeah, you're right. Maybe he didn't return the dye and the dye was worth $20, but he doesn't have to go give you an extra $20 if he's giving you back something worth $200 basically. So ask the Gemara at the end of the first wide line, Amri, they said to this question, he shouldn't have to pay anyways, because typically the yakir le nihile b'demei. He made the wool more valuable by dyeing it, right? Says, well, you're right that's usually the case. But there are some times, l'tzricha dizol tziva. Let's say it was very cheap. Let's say the market, Rashi understands, the market became very cheap. Everybody's got a red coat, right? And all of a sudden, red wool is no longer worth anything. So raw wool becomes worth more than red wool, because you can take raw wool and turn it blue if that's the color of the season, right? But everyone's got red. And so in that case, basically, if you hold ein shevach samanim al gabe tzemer, that basically the dye is gone, then if Reuven steals wool that's worth $100 and dye that's worth $20, and he mixes them together, but the wool that's now dyed is not worth $120, it's worth $100, let's say, or $50, then he gives the wool back to Shimon, but he's also got to give him back money for the dye that he stole because he hasn't given him back the dye. Sorry, that's one answer. Ibaidema's second answer at the second line of second wide line is Kigon Shetsavu Bahu Kupa. Let's say, and I'm gonna use the pshat that seems a lot more consistent with what we always talk about, but then I'll tell you Rashi's pshat, which is a heck of a lot more fun. That you used it to dye a box, right? People understand kupa to usually mean a basket, right? Yeah. And a basket, I don't care if my basket is blue or red or green. It doesn't increase the value of a basket if it's colored, right? A basket holds bread or it doesn't hold bread. I don't really care what color it is. And so it didn't add any value by dyeing it. And then the question is, when I give you back the basket, am I giving you back the basket and the dye? Or am I giving you just back the basket and do I have to pay extra for the dye? Now that's I think the simple pshat. Rashi has a beautiful pshat, which I love, is that you basically stole a monkey. So, so Reuven went and he stole a monkey. Rashi says a kof to mean a monkey, which is bizarre. And you stole dye. And you turn the monkey blue. Now, monkeys that are blue are not worth any more than monkeys that are not blue. And so basically, you didn't increase the value of the monkey by dyeing it. And so therefore, there's no increased value. And so when there's no increased value, the question is, did I give you back the dye or did I not give you back the dye?
Were there monkeys in France?
It's a beautiful shot. Part of the reason that some think Rashi said that, though Rashi does not claim that, Rashi brings both pshatim, but I like the monkey one a little more, is because of Ravina. Ravina, third line now, says, you know what? It's a whole different case. Ravina talked about a real monkey, which is why some like that Rashi had monkey on the pshat. Hacha b'mayaskinan, you know what happened is that Reuven went and stole wool from one person, and he stole dye from another person. Okay, going to tzemer dechad, the samanim dechad. Well, maybe he didn't steal it actually. He stole. You're right. He actually didn't steal. Take it back. It's not stealing. It's where there's wool that's owned by one person sitting in the marketplace selling his wool, and the guy next to him in the marketplace is selling dyes, and he's got a beautiful blue dye. And the ka'ati kof, and a monkey comes on. This is clearly really a monkey. Bitsavei lahu tzemer b'hanach samamim. He, the monkey, picks up the dye and pours it on the wool of the guy next door. So there's no stealing involved. No human was involved in this interaction. The question is, what happens now? You've got blue dyed wool. Can the guy who owned the dye say, well, some of my dye is there, give it back to me? Or can the guy who owns the wool say, there's no dye here, it's just the effects of the dye? So is it considered to be present or not? So
does the monkey belong to anyone?
The monkey, no. So there's no response. There's no,
Okay,
the monkey's responsible, but he ran away. So
okay.
now, right? The monkey dyed the wool with those dye. So do you say that in fact you view the dye as being present on the wool? So the blue wool is blue dye plus wool. And so the person whose dye it was can say Havli Samana de Gabach Ninu, right? Give me back my dye. Now, of course, you can't give back the dye, but you can sell the wool for more money and give the money back. Or Dilmor, do you say, look, there's the dye's gone. Sorry, you wash it down the drain. Ein shevach samanim agabit semer, v'amrilei hav li gabay klum. And he could say to him, let li gabay klum. I don't have anything of yours. So we don't have an answer.
How can he give back? Is he asking the monkey to give back the dye? Who's he asking
No.
to get the dye back
monkey's
from?
run
The
away.
monkey spilled the dye.
The monkey spilled the dye, but there's now a man or a woman in the shuk who has wool that's worth more than it was worth last week because the monkey came and made it blue, right? And so the question is, can the guy who owned the dye come and say, well, that's not really your wool. That's your wool and my dye. So give me back my dye. Now, you can't separate those two things. So sell it, take the amount of money that's worth your wool and give me the extra for my dye, right? Or do you say, look, I'm sorry that this monkey did it. We should get rid of monkeys in our shuk. But the dye was basically thrown down the drain. And now all that's left is my wool that is in my possession. So that's the question. So says the Gemara, we have an answer. Tashma.
But you talked earlier, you talked about Rashi. I saw the one Peshat on the Rashi on the Kof. I didn't see the other one. You said he brings down two
No, the Kof is always a monkey. In the Rashi on Kupa, if you look at Rashi and Kupa, right?
I just didn't see it. I just saw the one with the Kof.
So Rashi says the last 5 words in Rashi are the Amrila, and some people say it's Kupa shel Nitzarim.
Oh,
It's a basket of reeds.
oh, okay, all right.
Is that Nitzarim or reeds or wood, whatever Nitzarim.
Right, okay.
Okay, sorry, we're having technical issues. We're very sorry, we lost how do we get back? Sorry, we lost our Gemara for a second. We're trying to make the Rashi bigger. Okay, so that's those are the last words in Rashi. Says the Gemara, well, let's bring a proof from Tashma, 6 lines from the bottom. Tashma, let's come and bring a proof from the following case. Beged should savo beklipe arla. Okay, we're going off tangent, of course, of Bava Kamma, but nonetheless, it's related to monkeys and cloth and dyes. You have basically arla. Now remember, arla is prohibited. Arla is a tree in the first 3 years. You're not allowed to get any hana'ah from the fruits of that tree. You can get hana'ah from the wood of the tree, but not from the fruits, okay? So you can't eat them. But let's say instead of eating them, you take the persimmons from your tree and you turn the peels of those persimmons into a dye. They're nice, beautiful orange, right? You peel them off and you basically make them into a dye and you color your shirt with it. So says the Braita, it's not if it's a Braita, anyways, a cloth that was dyed with the shells of fruit that was arla, yidalek, you got to burn it. You got to burn the shirt. Because, Alma, what you see is chazuta milti, that the appearance that now it's orange, assuming it was persimmons, right, is part of the shirt. You don't say that it was a dye that was used and the dye is gone. You say it's still there, and basically it's arla, and since you got to get rid of arla, you got to burn the shirt. So you see a proof from there. Says Rava, well, that might be specifically by arla, because hana'ah nira le'inayim masrat Torah. The Torah prohibited any kind of hana'ah that is visible to the eye. Titania, as we learned in a Braita, 4 lines in the bottom, it says by Arla several extra psukim. One of them is areilim lo yochel, things that are Arla you shouldn't eat. Ein li'ela, says the Braita, ein li'ela is surachila. I only know you can't eat persimmons that are Arla. Ninayin shlo yehenem mehem. How do you know that you can't actually get hana'ah from them? V'lo yitzbabo, you can't use them for dye. V'lo yadlikbo, and you can't burn them for fuel. Etaner, sorry, for a candle. Talmud lomar, therefore the pasuk repeats arlatem arlato et piryo, right? It says it a few times. Arlatem arlato et piryo, that's 2. And the third time it says arelim lo yochel. So basically it says arla 3 times. The rabot et kulam tell you can't eat it, you can't get hana'ah from it by using it for dye, and you can't burn it in a candle. So that might not be generalizing. Now many changes to Rabbah, as we'll see in a bet. Tashma. Now it's okay. Let's prove it from next case. What about Shemitah? Beged shetzavo b'klipei shvi'it. Let's say you take, again, shells from fruit of Shemitah, which you're not allowed to get hana'ah from. The easiest explanation, which is not the one Rashi uses here, is that this is referring to something as a zman bi'ur, right? Remember on Shemitah, at a certain time, you're supposed to burn, get rid of everything that is still left. And so if you take that persimmon and you color your shirt and the zman bi'ur passes, your shirt should be destroyed. And Rashi doesn't say that here. Rashi actually talks about something else called schora, but I'm going to leave Rashi aside. It's actually a very difficult understanding of Rashi. So anyways, you took fruit of Shemitah that you have to get rid of, and you used it to dye your shirt. Says the Braita, Yidalek, you've got to burn it. Yidalek means you light it up on fire, not to get hana from it, because it's asur b'hana. So again, you see that the dye is considered to be part of the essence of the shirt. Shaniatim, that also might be different. The Markra Tihiyah, Zohar says a very special pasuk by Shemitah that the fruit should be, that's pasul, would be Tihiyah, which is always a word that we use to tell you b'haviyato tehei. It stays in its initial state, and even though you changed it, it doesn't change. But it could be that regular dye would change. So we can't prove it from there. Okay, says the Gemara. Well, turn the page to Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Bet. Rava Rami. Now that's right. Many changes the previous one to Rava because this is Rava, and it wouldn't make any sense for Rava to ask questions. We're going to see in a second that he seemed to have a very strong opinion about on Amud Aleph. So if you change the earlier one, Tosfos here I think says this. Tosfos here says that the Igaris. Rashi says near Tosfos says near Kisfarim de Garcina El Rabba. So you change the earlier one to Rabba, and this is Rava, so it makes a little more sense. So Rava Rami. Rava asked the following contradiction. Tznan, it says in the Mishnah that we just quoted, Beged shetzavo b'klipei arla yidalik, right? If you take a shirt and you stain it with shells of fruit that is arla, because you can't eat the fruit, you can't get benefit from the shells, and therefore yidalik, you got to burn it. Okay, implying, says Rava, al machazuta milti. You see that the appearance, the stain, the dye, is essence of the thing. That seems to be clear from that Mishnah. Viramini, but there's another Braita which talks about blood. This is a very complicated Braita in, I think, Oholot, where it says the following. It's a Mishnah. Revi'it dam shenivla'a b'bayit. Okay, now remember, a dead body is tamei mate, and if it's in a house, it spreads tumah throughout the whole house. The same is true as we learned many times in the Gemara and in the Mishnah in Oholot, by a revi'it of dam. If you have a collection of blood from a dead person, that's a revi'it together, it's like a whole body, and if it's in a house, it's metamei, and it's metamei by ohel, everything in the house. Okay, so let's say you have a revi'it adam shnivla b'bayit, but it got absorbed into the ground of the house. Because you can see why this is similar to a dye, right? So says the Mishnah, habayit tamei, right? Some people say the house, meaning doesn't mean the house can't be tamei, right? It's solid. It means objects in the house are tamei. But some people say habayit tahor. Some people say that, in fact, objects in the house are tahor because the blood is absorbed in the ground. Vilopli, now we explain in Oholot that they're not arguing. Habikalim dahavi meikara. If you had a table in the house or a shirt in the house initially, when the blood dropped in the house, then it becomes tamei. But habikalim da'atul b'so, right? If the blood was absorbed in the floor and then you brought a shirt into the house, it doesn't become tamei because there's no longer the blood in the house once it's absorbed into the ground. Okay, that's not related to us because that's the ground. Continues the Gemara there, the Braita, actually the Mishnah, nivla'a biksut. Let's say the blood is absorbed into a shirt. So a person died, right? And you have a revi'it of dam that gets absorbed into the couch. Okay, that's a good example. And then it's there in the couch, and then you walk into that house with a shirt. Is that shirt tamei ba'ohel because there's a revi'it of dam absorbed in the couch of the house? Says the Mishnah, ro'im, you have to analyze it. Im mitchabsot haksut. Let's say you wash the cushion of that couch. V'yotza mimenu revi'it dam. And you got out of that washing a revi'it dam. Now, how, of course, would you do that? So one way you can do it, Tosfos goes through a couple ways here. One is you can take, say, 3 liters of water, wash the couch, and then in the bucket that you wash it into, you have 4 liters of water. Now, of course, it's red water. So you know that a liter of that was blood. So that, or a revi'it, right? Whatever sure you're doing. So that's one explanation. It's not so simple. The other explanation is that you can, measure basically, I've done a lot of jobs where I'm cleaning blood out of couches. So if you have this much blood, you need that much water. If you have this much water, that much soap. Anyways, there's a lot of different ways. But let's say, says the Mishnah, that you wash out and you get a revi'at of dam, then it's tmeah. Then the whole house is tameh because there's a revi'at dam sitting in the couch. But in lav, tehorah. But if not, it's tahor. Because since you can't extract that revi'at of dam, it's tahor. But if you say that the appearance is the same as the thing, then even if you can't extract it, it was there. Revi'at dam went into that couch. So why isn't it also tameh? And so you see it's a contradiction. And Rav Kahana answered, I'm Rav Kahana, that you're right, that in fact that would make sense. But this is one of the exceptions, what's called kulei revi'ot shanu. It's one of the kula of the revi'at of dam, meaning one of the cases of revi'at of dam is not as strict as it would have been otherwise. And the reason is because we're talking about kan b'dam tfusa. We're not talking about blood that came out of a person after they died, which is with a dam that is tameh. A person died and then their blood extracted. This is dam tfusa, and dam tfusa is dam that comes out as a person is dying. And dam that comes out as a person is dying is actually not tameh midoraita, it's only tameh midorabanan. And since it's only tameh midorabanan, they made a kula that the blood in the couch is not going to become tameh. And so that's a special case, but not a generalizable case.
Yeah, because that's not the same with the nida, right?
Which question?
I said in terms of the blood, it's like
Nida is very different, right? So the blood itself is not the same tuma, it's whether the woman is tameh.
But
right.
It makes the couch tameh.
Right, but yeah, so
that's what I was getting at. I wasn't like talking about the blood itself.
Correct, but yes, so the couch itself would become tameh because there's no question the couch would be tameh mate in this case, right? The question here is talking about the house, right? Is it tameh be'ohel as if it's
the entire
house, okay. Right, so so the couch became tameh, no question. The question is it still there? And now that it's absorbed in the couch, do you still say it's present in the house?
Okay.
And so what we seem to be concluding, again, I don't know how we paskin halacha, is that it is that case, right? That if there's a revi'at of dam, it would be matami the house. The only reason it's not tameh here is because we're talking about blood that's not really that severe because it's dam tfusa, which is dam that's comes out of a person as they're dying, not after they die, which is the dam that you really have to worry about once they're dead, right? Because when they're alive, they're not dead, just to be clear. Continues the Gemara. Just to make that point. We're at the 2 dots. I don't know if there's 2 dots in every Gemara because I have this bizarre Gemara, which I don't know if it's accurate. Continues the Gemara, Rava Rami. Rava asked another contradiction.
Well, what is the thing that the whole point of these examples here that we just brought?
The whole point of this example is exactly this question. Do you view dye in wool to be dye and wool? And so this case of the monkey, right? Where again, the monkey, that's a great case. The monkey picked up the dye and poured it on someone else's wool. Can the owner of the dye go to the guy who owns the wool and say, I know it was unavoidable. I'm sorry that it happened, but my dye is sitting in your wool and therefore sell your wool and give me back money for my dye? Or do you view it and say, look, once the dye is absorbed into the wool, there's no such thing, there's no dye left, right? It happens and it's gone. And so these cases all show the relevance. Let's say you take, we're gonna have to keep more cases of it. Let's say you take dye that's asr, bahana, and you color your shirt. Is your shirt now asr bahana? Or do you say you did something wrong, but the dye is not there anymore, right? And that's if it's arla, or if it's shmita, or in this case, tumat mate, if it's from a dead person. Do you say that it's still present? So let's continue. Rava Rami. So Rava asked the following contradiction. So now there's a Mishnah that says, let's say you took mimin hatzovim, you took plants that are used to make dye, and these are things I'm going to use the English here because I have it, of svichei. These are 2 things. Svichei satim, which they translate here as the aftergrowths of woad, W-O-A-D, which is a useless word for me because I don't know what it means.
Blue dye.
And which makes blue, or kutza, which they translate as M-A-D-G-E-R, or matter, not with a T, with a D. Anyways, it doesn't matter, right? You took the wood, basically, that makes blue dye or red dye. And these things, says the Mishnah, yesh lahem shviyit. They have kedushav shmita, and therefore they have to be thrown away. When you throw away shmita, you have to use them properly. Ulu tamehem shviyit, and remember with shmita, it is tofes damav. So if you sell it, the money has the same status. And continues the Mishnah in Shvi'it, sorry. The Yesh Lahem Bi'ur, they have to be thrown away when the time comes to throw away this thing. And the Elut Mehem Bi'ur. So what you see, Alma, what you see from this is, from this Mishnah, Eitzim Yesh Bem Mishum Kedushat Shvi'it, that just wood, right, because you can't eat these things, right? They're only used for dye. But you see that wood alone has Kedusha Shemitah, and you've got to throw it away when you throw things away and treat it with Kedusha. That's one statement. However, there are many. But says Rava, I have a contradiction from another Mishnah, which says the following: Alei kanim, va'alei gifanim. Let's say you take, now these are very familiar to us, right? These are leaves of reeds or kanim, and leaves of grapes, which we love to eat, right? Alei gifanim, right? These are very much edible. So let's say it's Shemitah, and you collect the leaves from your reeds, and you collect your leaves from your grapes, and givivam. Givivam means you make them into a pile. Bichaveh, in a place of hiding, meaning you make them into a pile where they're hidden, basically. Alpnei sadan, you leave them out in your fields, right, in order to dry out and use the next year. So liktan la'achila, then it depends. If you initially gathered them together in order to eat them, right, because they would make grape leaves, let's say, then yesh b'hem mishum kedushat shvi'it. Then they are food, and they have kedushat shvi'it. But if you gather these extra pieces of the grapevines and the reeds in order to burn them, the eitzim, right, to use them as wood, then says the Mishnah, ein b'hem mishum kedushat shvi'it. Then they don't have kedushat shvi'it, which is a big contradiction. Because first you said if you take wood to dye, it is Shemitah. And here it's explicitly saying that if you take the extra parts of the grapes and the reeds, and you do it for the purpose only of burning it, not to eat it, then there's no Kedushat Shvi'it. So it seems like if you have wood, it's not Kedusha. Well, Mishani, and 4 lines to the bottom, Rava answered, Amar Kra, you know what the Pasuk says? The Pasuk says that things of Shemitah should be for you, li'achla, right? It should be lahem, I think, li'achla, for you, which implies anything, and lachla says to eat it. And what we darshan from there is mi shahanato ubioro shavin, that it is only things, Shemitah only applies to things that you get hana'ah, but the hana'ah and the destruction of the object is at the same time. The same way when you eat something, when you eat it is when you consume it and when you get the benefit. So the only time you're chayav for getting benefit from wood, for example, is if you get benefit at the time that you destroy it, such as things that, well, we'll see. Yatsu eitzim, but that excludes wood, shahanatan acher biuran. Remember, most of the time, when you burn wood, you don't get benefit from the burning of the wood. You get benefit from the charcoal, right? Because obviously you get some things we'll see in a second, you get light from them, but you don't get a lot of heat from burning things. You make it into coal. You take the coals, like when we make a barbecue, and you burn the coals in order to get things. So basically, you're destroying the wood to make coals. That's when you destroy it. You don't get benefit until you burn the coal. So the hana'ah, which is when you burn the coal, is not at the time that you destroyed it, which is when you burned the wood. And therefore, since the hana'ah and the bi'ur, the destruction, are not the same time, there's not a prohibition of doing that for Shemitah. So you can burn wood that's from a plant of Shemitah. The exception, of course, is a dye, right? Because a dye, you're not burning it. You're actually soaking it. And the time that you soak it is when it turns into a dye and it turns your cloth different. So wood that's used for dye would be asur on Shemitah. The wood that's used for burning would be permitted on Shemitah. Ask the Gemara 2 lines to the bottom, but that's not really true, because we've learned before that ha'ika eitzim de mashchan, there's wood of mashchan, right? Wood that's used for they say it's an olive wood here, but wood that's used for a torch, right? Which is wood that burns really, really well. It's true. It's not, you get benefit as you burn it. As you burn that torch, hanatan ubiuran shaveh. At the same time that you're burning it, you're getting the light. You're destroying it, and you're getting light from it. So why isn't that?
Also, if you're burning the wood for cooking or for heating the house.
So I'm a Rav. Let me give you Rava's answer. Says Rava, if you turn the page, stam eitzim lahasakahim omdin. Most wood is used, and again, not wood that's used for dyeing. Most wood that's burnt is burnt lahasaka. And hasaka means in order to make heating, But the way you would do it heating is not by, in 95, 99% of the times, or 50% of the, whatever, 80% of the time, it's not used to get benefit from the actual burning. It's to turn into coals and use the coals for your furnace to heat up your house in the winter, right? And therefore, the vast majority of the time, or at least stam, wood is used not for immediate benefit, but for later benefit. Now, it's no question that there are exceptions. And for example, an olive wood, which I guess doesn't turn to make a good coal, but makes a good torch. And as you might said, there might be cases where you're so cold that you burn your wood just to get heat from the burning of the wood. But since those are exceptions, Shemitah does not apply to them. And so Shemitah of wood only applies in a case where you're using it for a dye, where the hana'ah and the destruction are at the same time, but all other wood would not apply the halachot of Shemitah if you're not planning to eat it. So as long as you're not eating it, Shemitah does not apply. Now, don't go yet for Shemitah and do that, because we're going to continue tomorrow with Amarav Kahana, where he's going to ask questions about this concept of whether stam eitzim are meant to be burned or not necessarily the case. So we will stop there at the top line. And thank you for joining. I don't know.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua tov.
Super Bowl.
And happy Super Bowl. Okay, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.